Hello everyone, my name is Otto. I work for a company called Village, our organization called Village Schuster, and I'm part of the Rainbow sector of Village Schuster called Rainbow for instance. I'm 26 years old, I'm Samoan, New Zealand born, and today we just, myself and the panelists are just going to discuss issues that Pacific Island was both born in the Pacific and born here have related to farming and rainbow. So I'll leave it to the panel to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Pema, as many of you know. I help run EquAsian, which Ben, myself and David are co-founders for. Basically, we are the social support group for queer Asians in Auckland, and my background is I was born in Taiwan, but also raised in a Pākehā family. So yeah, that's me.
Oh, kia ora. I'm Drew. I've got a really messed up bloodline, I'll be honest. My father is half European, half Rarotongan, and my mother is half Māori, half Kiwi. I was born in Auckland. I'm 24, I've just turned 24, so I'm still a baby, although I don't look like a baby. I currently am the newly appointed diversity rep for AUT. So it's a new role, it's really daunting, I am really nervous about it, but I am really excited at the same time to expand the role and sort of see what we're not doing, what we can do to support students in general, especially our LGBT community. I identify as being whawhawhinge or akawaine, otherwise known as transgendered. And I've identified with that from a very young age. I'm very lucky that my parents knew at probably the age of 3. No, I'll be honest, it was probably like 10 months, that I was going to be like this. And yeah, I've identified as it ever since then. So, and I hold really strong and really proud of it. So, thank you. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Shaniqua, but today I'm going to be Tyra. I'm from the Cook Islands. I'm from the Tiere Association. It's the only LGBT association in the Cook Islands. I'm from Cook Islander. And yeah, that's it.
Hi everyone, my name is Remy. I'm of mixed Samoan descent. My parents are both Samoan, but with European background as well. I'm New Zealand born, so I was born here. Currently, I'm working as a technology specialist, but I am an aspiring graphic designer. And yeah, I come from a family of 3, 2 older sisters. I'm the youngest. I'm also 24. I just came out last year as gay. So yeah, and that's me.
Bula Minaka. My name is Tamanirarama. Seruiraduvatu. That's a Fiji name. I am currently with the Rainbow Pride Foundation as well as the Underlying Movement. I'm here on behalf of the Underlying Movement, which stands for Rainbow. I'm also part of the co-working group for an LGBTIQ organization based in Malaysia called the Youth Voices Count. And I'm also currently with part of the Youth Parliament in Fiji.
Taloha everyone, my name is Kevin Schuster. I currently run a little business in Samoa. It's called Events Marketing and Distribution. Prior to that, I worked as a marketing manager for ANZ Bank and also Samoa Stationery and Books. It's the fastest growing electronic stationery, office furniture, blah, 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 company in Samoa. I think yesterday I mentioned that I do not belong to any association. I don't join any association of LGBT. Well, there's no such thing in Samoa but the Whawhawhine Association. But I guess because I've done too many things, I've forgotten that I established the Whawhawhine Association in the university. the National University of Samoa back in 2008. That was when I was the student president of the whole university. I set up the association just to, you know, gather everyone together, and mostly they really assisted me with my, you know, presidency throughout my year. And we had just recently relaunched because when I left the university, it sort of died out, like what Sophie's theory of, you know, what could be happening with her plans also. So yeah, I part of something. I just remembered. Okay then, thank you.
We had a great idea of writing some of the terminologies on the whiteboard, so we're just gonna, if you guys can just pull that over the whiteboard, we're just gonna use the whiteboard.
Basically, with all our individual backgrounds, we all have different terms that we kind of identify with within our own cultures. We'll probably refer to them a lot during our panelist discussion. So just to help you guys understand, they're not exactly the same as the terms that we're used to here, so as New Zealand born. So we'll write them up, what country they're from, and yeah, if you guys have any questions about it, just let us know.
So, in Western terms, you have the LGBTQI, but for Pacifica, we have what we call FAF with a V on the end, and that represents Whawhawhine, Akavaine, Whakaleiti, Wakasalewalewa, and that represents each of the Pacific nations. We have our own terminology for them, and just waiting on a pen.
Just waiting on the text.
And feel free to ask questions as well. Just talk about the meaning behind Whawhawhine, the cultural aspects.
Okay then, while they're cleaning up the board, it's important that we all thought that it's important that we also write on the board so that maybe you'll also take note of the terms that actually identify us and where we're from. Because I think in my group from yesterday's discussion, if they call like a meeting like this in Samoa, like it's not LGBTIQ, it'll be the Samoa Whawhawhine Association, which I think would be the transgender is the closest to it, of the terms that we've got here. So it'll be just Whawhawhines, present, It's unheard of that gay men or lesbians, are present at the meetings. So this morning, we've decided to also put up the, so there's the Whawhine for Samoan, Wakasalewalewa for Fiji, Akalaine for Karen, and Whakaleiti for Tonga.
Yeah, we love to figure out the Niuean one, but there's no Niuean on the panel. So that's a work in progress, that one. I think too, around the idea of whawhawhine, growing up in New Zealand, I know for myself, being Pacific Islander, that word alone sort of means a lot. Because if you don't know, I know personally, there are times where, you grow up and you don't know how to identify and there's no terminology and there's no sort of background around what it is. For me, and especially my family, we automatically turn to our cultural makeup. And that term alone, it is quite strong. it doesn't matter what cultural group you come from, especially in the Pacific, that word is sort of the word that you go to, because everyone sort of has a generalized idea of what it is. It is one of those words, though, that, like Kevin said, it is a word that sort of covers a whole lot of group. Like in Samoa, I think we spoke about this, there is no cultural word for being gay, there is no cultural word for being lesbian. It's sort of just one inclusive word. And I think sometimes it can be really confusing. And we did speak about this too, because as being whawhawhinge, they think we all dress like this, you know. They all think we're trying to take everyone's husband. We don't want your husband, okay? We don't want him. But it is one of those things that, you know, everyone thinks that, you know, you are going to see some bright red lipstick, right, walking around on the street, when that's sort of not the truth, because that term covers so much. And I think as a group, and especially as an islander, I find it hard sometimes, like trying to figure out where people sit and all that kind of stuff, especially growing up in New Zealand, because I never had the island upbringing and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you know, I had a white dad, so that was really interesting growing up. But terms like this are things that I know myself and probably a lot of us on this panel hold really strong to, because it is an identifier that we really identify with. And that was one of the main reasons we wrote it up, so that if you do hear these words, you're not like, oh, what does that mean? It's there for you. So cool.
Yeah, terms like gay, lesbian, transgender, they're regarded as quite taboo within the Pacific Island community. You wouldn't go up and start talking, using those words if you're speaking with the older generation of Pacific Islanders. But if you were to use terms like whawhawhine, whakaleiti, it's almost like the concept of being feminine is accepted in the Pacific Islands, but the notion of being gay, the whole idea of two people of the same sex being intimate with each other is totally taboo, and it's still, would you say, Kevin, it's still an issue that's being discussed?
We were also covering things like, because the Whawhawhine Association make a lot of noise in Samoa, that's why I think it contributes to why they earned recognition. And, you know, even the patron of the association is the Prime Minister, and because they do a lot of events and charity work. So they sort of, you know, they're mostly on TV, or, you know, nationwide TV or the radio, or, you know, even in the newspaper, you know, their coverage of what they're doing. So because they're making noise, that's why they get that, you know, sort of, you know, recognition. Whereas opposed to gay men, you know, lesbians, you know, it's, you know, you never hear about it, which was why it's very, very interesting that, you know, that I've come to this forum, thanks to everyone that sort of helped got me here, as well as the Pacific delegates, because, you know, I can take it back home, and maybe, you know, maybe they'll have to come forward and, you know, work together and, you know, to make some noise. And, you know, Samoa is a small Pacific Island country, and people, you know, almost everyone know everyone. So I think maybe it wouldn't be as hard as, you know, the pitch that's actually done here.
I think another struggle with Pacific Island, with the Pacific Island rainbow community is culture and religion go hand in hand with each other. So that's like, you know, two quite significant factors which make it quite harder. And I think everyone on the panel can identify with that struggle of having to, is it too far? There's boundaries, but there's no definite boundary. So you always have to keep within that line of cultural and religious norms. Did you want to elaborate on that?
I'm going to add on to that as well. And Asian cultures as well in New Zealand struggling with that, balance between culture, religion, and identity, where, you know, when we were talking before, the ideology where, you know, a lot of Asians that do come to New Zealand take on, you know, a more European religion. However, sometimes it seems more set back in the sense that it's so rigid to move, and it's creating such a rift between people who want to identify with surpassing, that religious connotation with the identity of gender and sexuality, that it's making it very, very hard for them. Yeah.
I guess also, just to touch also what Drew and Kevin were saying, because Drew said what Drew said about the word whakawhine, it's quite a broad term. So like sometimes like with all the events that the whakawhine community do, sometimes there are like gay people there, but it's just because there's no term. Sometimes it's just forgotten, just because there isn't one in our culture. So also with what we're talking about with religion, I don't know about you guys, but for me growing up, I guess it's part of the island culture to do what you're told, as a child, until you earn the right to, be able to speak for yourself. But it does take a while in island culture before sometimes you do just keep going, oh no, haven't earned it yet. But with things like culture and religion, also there's things like you can't question it when we're growing up. So it's kind of like whatever they say, we just, we trust, that's what it is. That's what it is. And if you're kept, also I wasn't really brought up in a heavy island background, so I didn't have the sort of support that I thought, was there. I didn't think it was there. I was like, oh, it's just whatever's confined within my little box, which I'm sure some of you guys can relate to that. Whatever your parents say, and we also brought up not to disappoint our family. So even with Asian cultures, so we try so hard to make them proud and happy, but you kind of know in the back of your mind, like, oh, when this comes out, it doesn't matter, like, I could be president of the world and still, like, it's still going to be, like, not good enough, because we know that in our culture, there's something that, and so sometimes we strive so hard to succeed in other areas, and just to be like, oh, maybe that'll be enough, maybe that'll be enough too. And for sometimes it is, like, depending on the situation, but it is really different with every individual, situation. So it's not all like the same. So it's like, do well in school and we'll accept, it's like, no, it's not like that, but we kind of, in our own minds, we kind of think that, we're like, we got to do well in everything we do. We just listen. It doesn't matter. We don't question it. We don't think, is that right? Not until, say, us now, where we're able to talk to each other and find out, oh, and it makes us really think about what can we do now for future generations and stuff too, because we didn't have the sort of knowledge that we, before, but now we can share it so that people are more informed, and perhaps it makes it a lot easier for younger generations. Like I said, I came out last year when I was 23, when I was 16, no, when I was 23. But see, for me, I thought, oh man, it took me so long. But then, some people could be still, still struggling with that. And even though people think, oh, you're out now, it's fine. No, there's still more, more struggle that comes after that, How many times do we do it, etc. And then even then, sometimes your parents go, oh, and they never talk about it ever again. And you're like, oh, does that mean it's okay? Or do I still have to strive to be better? I'm not sure.
I mean, around the idea of disappointment, I suppose, being Pacific Islander, there are things you need to know. School of Auntie Drew. Being Pacific Islander, there are probably two things that your parents expect of you. One is you don't get anyone pregnant. That's not going to happen on this table. And two, you don't disappoint your family. Your family's name means more than your life. So as being gay, lesbian, whawhawhinge, you've already got 20,000 things against you that you don't want to disappoint your family on. And it's not easy. It's not easy. But I suppose it's how you look at the situation. You can either do this or you can do that. And it's, at the end of the day, it's you as a person that makes the decision to not, I suppose, disappoint. I mean, there are obviously going to be times where, I'm not going to make my parents happy and all that kind of stuff. But it's how I come back from that matters. I mean, I dropped out of university when I left high school. I only did 2 years. All I had to do was finish an extra year and I would have had a degree. And that was, for me, that was the hardest thing I ever had to tell my dad. It was harder than telling him than actually fully coming out to him. You know, that was a side note. The hardest thing for me was telling my dad, I'm not going to finish this degree. So the disappointment of that is what you don't want to do as Pacific Islander. I think it's the idea of, you know they have a child who's different, you know, and that's fine. But to have a child that's different and will sort of disappoint you, that's even worse. So, yeah, I know you've got some stuff on that. So.
Sorry, just one more thing. To add on to that, the disappointment. It's something that's very well shared amongst the Asian community of bringing shame on your family. And of course, you know, I really must stress that the idea that Asians are repressed. They're not repressed, but there are a lot of cultural values that bring on many aspects that, the idea of disappointment is one of them. On, you know, you can say it to your cousins in your generation, but you can't say it to anybody else in your parents' generation because it brings shame on your family. And, you know, to bring shame on your parents is a really, really, really big thing. So you kind of have some sort of freedom of, I guess, coming out, but not entirely, because you sometimes you don't actually, in some cultures where you have to always think about your parents, and that can be quite hard, especially when you put a Western ideology on top of that as well. Yeah.
I mean, just going on from that, for me in high school, Pacific Island ideology is, you know, all about respect. Respect your elders and keeping within the confines of culture. And then you're going to high school and the school nurse and the teachers are trying to be proud of who you are, you know, and there's that conflict. Culture tells you one thing and society tells you another. And I think that's where a lot of tension happens with, I guess, the Asian and Pacifica rainbow communities. Just going to open it up to you guys. For questions. Anyone have any questions in regards to anything that we've spoken about so far?
I think one thing that you guys might be interested in is, Otto brought it up, is the relationship between culture and religion. I come from, and I'm still very proud of it, I come from a very staunch Catholic family. You know, so, you know, church on a Sunday, you have no choice, you know. We're all in the car at 9 o'clock, whether you like it or not. Whether you're still wearing pajamas, your ear and your t-shirt, you're getting in the car. The idea around religion and culture, especially being, you know, whawhawhinge, is that being whawhawhinge culturally is fine. You know, it's fine, you know, your aunties love it, your uncles love it, everyone loves it. Being gay and lesbian though, no, because the Bible says it's not okay. The double standard, to this day, I love my cultural upbringing and I love that we're very religious. I still don't get it. I don't get it one bit, I don't understand it, because it's sort of like, hold on, this is fine, but this isn't. And it's that idea of culture and religion. They clash, and there's this real big grey area that everyone's a little bit like, huh? Like, this is all right, but this isn't all right. And I think, especially growing up here, you know what I mean? Because, like, I think we talked about this, Otto talked about this, like, you know, we've got people campaigning for, like, gay marriage and all that kind of stuff. You know, in the Pacific, like I said, we accept certain things, but gay marriage in the Pacific, oh no, don't you bring that up. No, don't you talk about it, you know. And I just find it really, you know, I still find it really, like, we've still got room that we need to grow on and all that kind of thing.
And adding on to that, we were talking about racial relations as well.
Yeah.
You know, just how different it can be for some of us who we are completely isolated by the majority who misidentifies us or and then to be marginalized more in the rainbow community, in the LGBT community, because of our racial backgrounds. And I think, yeah, that was something that we had in common of we were even marginalized even further. And it's a very isolated place to be in for many of us. You know, figuring out culture, of what Otto was saying, everyone out there going, yeah, gay pride, but then not having that at home, but then completely racially excluded from certain other things. Yeah, it can be very, very difficult. Yeah.
It's quite hard. Oh, sorry, continue. No, you go.
I was just have a question around saying how it's culturally accepted to be not to be gay or
Yeah.
lesbian. Do you think that creates a discourse between sexuality and gender identity? Because I know a lot of people, when they're coming to terms with one or both of those things, often there is sort of confusion around am I gay? Am I, I'm attracted to men, but does that mean I'm a straight transgender woman? Do you think the cultural acceptance around being whakawhine means that often people find it more difficult to come to terms with perhaps just their sexuality? And so they perpetuate perhaps a gender identity that's there because it's more accepted? I'm not sure if I'm making any sense there.
No, yeah, I get you. And I can completely relate to that. Growing up, I was always fed, because I went to a predominantly Pacific Island school, and whawhawhine, that's the thing that I was always fed. So when I came to terms with my sexuality, I thought, oh, I'm supposed to dress feminine. And so I started doing it just because my environment was like that. And then I realized, actually, no, that's not me. That's what culture kind of expects of me, but that's not actually who I am. So then I pulled out. But still, in cultural terms, I'm identified as whawhawhine, but in the wider world, I'm gay, and I'm just comfortable with that. Yeah, it does create confusion, especially, I think, for the New Zealand-born. It's would you say, Remy?
I did find it quite difficult for me as a New Zealand-born Samoan. So I didn't necessarily, I didn't understand whawhine because bad, but I can't even speak Samoan. Like, I wasn't raised in that sort of upbringing, but my whole family was. So, like, not my sisters, but like when you go further out, like your aunties, your uncles, they're all so used to that culture, and where I wasn't. So I didn't even understand that. And as a New Zealand-born Samoan, like, I used to talk like this all the time. I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm so. But that's not even me. This is me, But I thought that was me for so long, because I would talk like I'd go to work and I'd be like, oh, you guys are right there. Did you need any help? Like, I just thought that was me. And then until like, when people say, oh, whawhine, I go, oh, that's not really me. I don't really understand, I mean, some days you do like, oh, I'm going to wear a dress today. Sometimes you're like, but I think it's that whole thing with labels, but there's no discussion about it. So it's like when you want to find out who you are, and as soon as it gets too difficult, they just shut down. Like, island communities will just turn off. They'll just be like, no, we're not going to talk about it. So it's good that now, like with generations coming up, we're able to talk about it, whereas before no one would talk about it. So as soon as it gets too difficult, we just fall back, be like, no, it's wrong, don't ask why, not going to figure out why, not going to talk about it, not going to discuss. So I found it quite hard, because growing up, going to school, even within your culture, so like your fellow, like for me, Samoans would pick on me, so you'd get bullied by people like, but we're the same culture, Too much, I think, focus was put on our differences instead of our similarities. So, I don't know, that's just my opinion on it anyway, as a New Zealand-born Samoan. But what do you guys find as born in overseas, back home?
I think, adding on to what you said about that, it has to do a lot with how sex alone is a taboo topic to talk about. So let alone speak about LGBTIQ. So with the the topic of sex, when you talk about sex, like in family, like you won't see families like probably sitting down, like talk about like how you do it here in the West. Sorry about that, but the Western world has its own terms. Like we have like family discussion, like this kind of serious family planning and stuff like that. But with more specific islanders, with how Drew.
I can be cozy.
How Drew mentioned about the umbrella word of Fafafine that takes up the whole like gay and lesbian. I think that is why they are more receptive to coming to these events and stuff that are brought up by LGBTIQ organizations, which are profoundly more on shared by the trans community of the society.
Sorry, did that answer your question at all?
Okay.
Also, something interesting is you'll find that the Rainbow community born in the Pacific, they are more comfortable using the terms whakawhine, whakaleiti, akavaine, but the Rainbow community born here, they gravitate towards the Western terms, transgender. They're almost afraid of those cultural terms. And I've always found that really interesting. We had a whānau last year, and that was a topic of heated debate. You know, you should take back your cultural term. You know, it's for us. But then the New Zealand born were like, no, we see ourselves more as gay and transgender. And yeah, it's a really interesting point of discussion. Like I identify as gay. What about you, Kevin?
I'm identified as whakawhine in Samoa. I'm probably one of the few that do not dress up, and yeah, I'm sure you would all know why. But yeah, most of them, most of all my friends, they all dress up and all identified as whakawhine. And when they come here, it's also the same term and everything.
And to a degree, culturally, it's tolerated. Like I said before, the act of two men engaging in sex or anything of that nature is taboo. But to be feminine, that role of an entertainer, almost the equivalent to the Western drag queen, that's the whole concept that Pacifica celebrate, that they tolerate. But when it comes to the real nitty-gritty, it's there's no real discussion about it. And I think that's also something culturally driven, is we don't have discussions about these kind of things. I think the younger generation were more open to talking about these things, but we would never sit down with our parents and be like, talk about our sexuality or sex in general. So, yeah.
I think also when we were talking about the term whakawhine, even me as a Samoan, I didn't understand it. But you can't go, Mom, Dad, can you explain this term to me? Because they won't. They'll just be like, oh, it's just never mind. Or like, it's just go do the dishes. It's like, so even for me, like I didn't really understand it. So like Otto said, I wouldn't use it just because I don't feel comfortable using a word that I'm not familiar with using. I mean, I didn't have friends at a young age who would use the term, so I couldn't, it's with our cultures, it's all about handing down, passing it through our ancestry, and it's just word of mouth. But you can't, I can't ask my mom and dad, so what does it mean to you? And they're not going to have a, okay, son. So that's why I think it's harder for me, just with my experience being born in New Zealand. So I would go towards the terms, that we would use in New Zealand, which would be gay, lesbian, transgender, bi, all the different, labels. Here, that's what I was more comfortable with, because, ask Google. Google told me, Internet was my friend when no one would, and within your house, no one would tell you, so you're like, I can't look it up. But with these sort of things, it means something different to, all the people in our culture. So you might ask your auntie, she'll have a different interpretation, because it's such a broad word. So.
I think another factor, and I think the Asian community faces the same kind of thing, is a lot of our parents and our grandparents' generation, they moved to countries like New Zealand for opportunity. So they've already got the language barrier, they've already got, the trying to adjust to the culture. The last thing they really want is to find out that their kid is gay or transgender or whakawhine. And then that just, adds to the stress, because they have this ideology that in the Western world, you can't really make it in the real world being the way you are. And I think that's just the cultural, what would you call it? You know, kind of like with the entertainers, we have specific roles associated with being gay, whakawhine and stuff, and they just have that stereotype that there's a brick wall waiting for us at the end. And I guess it's out of love, but it's also, you know, enforced by culture a lot, would you say?
Yeah, I think for the people that I have been speaking to is that even sort of the third generation, second generation Chinese people who have migrated here are very staunch on their culture because they don't want to relinquish that. However, the problem is that the time that they came here, you know, it's changed, you know, over time, but they're still stuck in that generation and that era where it's actually moved elsewhere and they're actually a little bit more progressive. So you have this clash of who am I, what am I, you know, am I a Westerner, am I an Asian, am I this, am I that, and then, you know, internal racism begin and self-loathing begin as well, and that's a definite challenge for us. Yeah.
Another issue I find with the Pacifica, there's a strong representation for the whakawhine, but often we neglect the lesbian community. And I find that it's okay to be whakawhine, to be an effeminate male, but often, you know, the topic of being lesbian is, you know, being lesbian is almost being worse than being gay. Two males, two women, it's like unheard of. And I think that so what about the Cook Islands? Is that the same kind of?
In the Cook Islands, lesbian is not as bad as being gay. Yeah. When the lesbians do their thing, everyone just leaves them do their thing, you know. But if you see two guys going past on the bike holding each other, that's when everyone starts talking about it. It's like what Drew said, even with the transgender, yeah, everyone's fine with you being drag queen, yeah, I think it's, back home, they think what the gays do is the transgender don't do it, like in the room kind of thing. So they think we just look pretty, sing a song, dance and everything. But I don't think they're educated on that. We do the same thing as the men are doing. Yeah. So like, yeah, that's, I think, where we go wrong.
Love this.
Yes.
Duncan?
So you mean the upside? Yeah, the upside. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you know, as many issues as we've gone over, I mean, it's great being gay and lesbian and being Pacific Islander. It is. We have a rich heritage. I'm not going to lie, it's great. You know, we have the best performers in the world. Shut the show down. And it is, I mean, yeah, I mean, historically, I know with, and Kevin will probably go into this a bit more, I mean, there are tons of documentaries about being, you know, why whakawhine came up and gay and all that kind of stuff. I think as Pacific Islanders, we come from very big families. That's public knowledge, let's be honest. Having less than 5 children is a rarity. So it's quite normal to come from a caring background, you know, and I mean, my mum is one of 12, my dad is one of 11, I'm one of 1, I'm an only child. So it was very rare when I was born because, you know, they were expecting more. It's very common with a caring family. Like I have an auntie, she's lesbian, and she's one of 13. That's very common for the oldest one to look after the rest of the children, you know. So your parents go to work, you know, they go and do what they need to do, and the oldest one gets left home with the rest of the children. And I think too, because, well, for me, because she was lesbian, she had a little bit more love in terms of being able to look after people and care for that kind of thing. I think the reason that I reference families is because that is such a big thing, you know. Being a Pacific Islander, you're nothing without your family. You know, who are you? Kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, as much as we would all, you know, that whole sex thing comes up, there is a big, great upside to it, you know. We have 75 first cousins, you know. And so the whole idea of care and love and support is big. I mean, I'm going to leave Kevin to the rest of that because historically there's probably a lot more around that whole idea.
I think what is certain here is the Filipinos have made noise, whereas the gay men haven't. And that's why the Filipinos are, you know, continuing to lead the, you know, the way in Samoa in terms of, I mean, you know, LGBTIQ. And they constantly, you know, they're constantly doing something, but not the gay men. And I know, you know, with all that culturally taboo and that, I think one of the learnings from here is, you know, they need to come together and, you know, start forming something up, like, you know, an association, and start, you know, having the conversation like what we've had. And I'm glad to take this back to my island because I fit in the Filipino Association, but I will be sort of pushing this. And I think I remember about 4 or 5 years ago, there were talks that, you know, sort of kick-started, and then it just stopped. Because I remember they put through, I think in, you know, on some of the laws in Samoa, they, even transgender is not allowed. Like, I mean, a male can't wear a female outfit, but I think there's about maybe 300 of them wearing it. And so, you know, they should all be jailed or something like that, but, you know, they're not. And there's, you know, only when we had that forum, well, only when they had that forum and I stopped by, you know, I knew that you know, there's a law against male dressing up as female. So I'm like, oh wow, I can actually prosecute all my friends. And then I'll be the only one. Yeah, no, it's good to, but, you know, whereas for here, and when I first dipped in, you know, for the LGBTIQ conference, it's really good to see. And, you know, I think it's a new dawn to actually start, you know, having this conversation in the islands. I'm sure because there's no conversation, that's why they're probably, you know, thinking, I mean, why fix it when it wasn't broken? Yeah, so I think, yes? Well, I wouldn't say it's too early. I mean, you know, we keep saying that, you know, we're the future. I mean, you know, why not now? But if this conference is held in Samoa, I mean, it'll just be us, and a million of Whafinis.
Yeah. I feel sorry for the other people who aren't in
They'll
the
probably
conference.
sort of intimidate us. But, but it's good to have. I mean, it hasn't started. I think that's why. I mean, I'm sure I speak, for all of us in the Pacific. Yeah, well, except for Fiji, because Fiji's always more advanced than us. So they've actually, obviously, according to Tamani, they've got this association, LGBTIQ in Fiji. So they've started, their conversation. At least something's happened.
Just adding on to that, I think as a New Zealand-born Samoan, I feel that I would be more accepted if I was more feminine when I went back home and people were aware of that, as opposed to if I went home as me now and being like, oh, I'm gay, they'd be like, all of a sudden I'm cast out. And I think we talked about it earlier, where it's unfortunate that because of the lack of discussion, we end up narrowing our groups down even further. So it starts getting smaller and smaller, and then it's like, oh, it's just me in this group, the blue unicorn. I was like, all of a sudden, it's like, where do I oh, it's like, so that's where I'm supposed to be.
Behind you, sorry.
I suppose we've been talking about these experiences, just looking at each country in an entirety, but there are different areas you might experience more or less prejudice, more or less discrimination. I'm more familiar with Fiji, but as you get out into the islands, going out west, do you experience more or less discrimination? Are there certain areas where things are less safe or more safe?
This is better for you guys.
I think for Fiji, in terms of answering your question, it's the policies that are in place that makes it more easier for gay people to come out publicly. Post 2010, we had a crimes decree which decriminalized homosexuality. So thus from then onwards, we have been seeing a lot of participation of straight gay men and lesbians. But before that, I don't think so. There were a lot of participation from the gay community. And in terms of discrimination, there is less now because you can take people to court for being violated.
Do you see those changes happening more in or do you see that in the Italian?
I think it's probably it's mostly in you see this in terms of people knowing their rights. It's mostly the people in the urban. It's the rural that are not really aware of their rights and responsibilities. And at the moment, we have our organization, the Non-Aligned Movement, is doing exactly that, and it's going towards the rural community in advancing their knowledge on their rights.
Just for Samoa, out in the rural areas, and we're more accepted easily. We're actually more embraced out in the rural areas, but this is Phoenix. This is not gay men. So, yeah, it's actually easier out in the rural, than urban.
That's what Shaniqua just
like the Cook Islands too. Because back in the Cook Islands, like on the outer islands, there'll be only one or two gay or transgender. And on those islands, everyone knows who you are.
You're like a pop star.
So, you're the Beyonce.
You're someone's cousin, your auntie is thing, your uncle's thing, so everyone just, it's better on the outer islands than it is on the main island.
I think, just to touch on, sorry about the question. Just to touch on that, we have a really big thing in the Pacific community to, as many issues as there are in terms of what we face and what comes up, we have a real big streak as Pacific Islanders to celebrate a lot. Like, we'll celebrate over a dog's birthday, to be honest. You know, you give us a forum and a space, we'll do it. And celebrating being, I suppose, whawhawhinga and gay is, when you do have the one or two in a village, it's seen as like a rarity, you know, you're it, you know, and yeah, and I mean, it comes with its challenges, and at the same time, it comes with its things that, you know, even though this isn't accepted and there are all these kinds of things, I suppose it's how you as an individual take it. Like, I mean, look at Cindy of Samoa. You know, if you listen to her backstory, it's intense. It's not the nicest backstory, but look what she did. You know, everyone was saying all of this stuff about her, and she said, well, I'm going to use all of that, and I'm going to be the best. You know what I mean? And Sister shuts it down. You know, I think it's how, and it's an example of, or even though all that was happening, you know, the community got around and was just like, wow, you know, we're just going to celebrate what it is. And that's one thing I hold really close to my heart, is that even though we all want to kill one another and we want to strangle each other at family functions and my auntie doesn't like me and all that kind of stuff, at the end of the day, there's probably still all going to band together, and if you entered a pageant, that auntie who hates you is going to be the loudest one in the crowd. You know, and it is one of those things that, you know, at the time, if you're standing on the outside, you're like, gosh, that's odd, but gosh, that's cool. You know, there are cool things about it. Sorry, you had a question?
Ben?
Robbie? No, you.
Going back to what you touched on about femininity, from what I've heard, it sounds like in the islands it's more accepted to have feminine traits and embrace the whakawhenua culture as more feminine, as you're saying, it's almost worse to be a lesbian, which I guess is often associated with, you know, fulfilling more masculine roles. Do you think perhaps the reason that in Western culture we demonize feminine traits and sort of marginalize gay and transgender people for being feminine, do you think that's possibly why here in Mano it's harder for people to embrace their whakawhenua culture because, you know, basically here we idolize a middle-aged white man?
Boom. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly, I mean, I don't think it can ever be better put. But I think the, my preference is, you know, this is what this was our upbringing, and we'd like to, even if I move to live here, I'd like to continue being, you know, perceived as such. I mean, with all due respect to your culture, but, you know, I've got mine too, you know, and I'm coming with the way I'm perceived at my, you know, at my island and my country. So, you know, but I think it's all for the masculinity. It goes back to what I was saying. I mean, there was no conversation, no discussion, no education about it. Not necessarily formal education, but, you know, just conversation and just like consultation, like what the whoever was presenting yesterday, Tanu touched on yesterday. Thank you. I know Ben and Skylar have been raising their hands, so and then Bronson. So, but I'm not the chair.
Ben, sorry, I don't know anyone's name. Ben
And
was it?
Skylar.
Ben.
That's a hard question.
Yeah.
It's a good
Because,
question.
like, especially with Tongans, I mean, my best friend is Tongan. And in Tonga, there are two things you never do. That you never question religion and you never question the royal family. So it's really hard being, I suppose, Pacific Islander, holding the two together. And, you know, you will often see Pacific Islanders trying to find the happy medium. You'll often see it. And I mean, the most obvious of those trying to find it is it's gift giving. Gift giving, especially to the church. You know, because culturally, the more you give, the more blessings you're supposed to receive. You know what I mean? And so it's really hard, I suppose, to figure out where culture and religion sit. For me personally, culture is a lot higher because that's my heritage and that's where I've come from.
Yeah, I agree as well, because I think culture is the foundation that was there, and then the colonizers came with religion, and we kind of painted religion using culture. So we've made religion, like, it's important, but culture is the backbone to the religions that we've adopted. So it's really interesting that you pointed it out that way.
It's funny too how it's mixed at some points, and then when you get to stuff like when we talk about it together, like, so religion, culture, I'm gay. It's all of a sudden, nope, not together. You know, and then they're like, oh, but where's the no, we're not talking about it. You know, so some things are mixed together. So you'll find that because my family are Presbyterian as well. So I grew up in the church, and it's really hard when you get older and you're like, oh, I've grown up with all these people, you know, and now it's like, maybe I'm not supposed to be here, you know? And then when you go to your parents for support, they're like, oh, yeah, we kind of want you there, but then we're kind of like, oh, and then they ask themselves questions as well. So I think religion and culture, mind you, culture did come first, like Otto said. So I think that when you come to like, say an island church function or something, you know, maybe an island wedding, you'll see that it's religion, but a lot of the culture is put into it. So when you go to, you'll see the differences as opposed to a Western, you know, like a Western Presbyterian wedding or an island Presbyterian wedding. You know, you'll see the differences, but they kind of merge together because a lot of the culture came first, so they implement that into their religion.
Skylar?
I love that question. I know Shaniqua's probably got a good answer. But when I've been home to Raro, there really is no gender. There really is. But I suppose, yeah, when I've been home to Rarotonga, like, yeah, man sleep with a man. You know, you don't talk about it though. You know, don't do that. You know, it's sort of just a real sort of, like, you know, there are men and females, and then there is a third gender. I suppose as a Pacific Islander, we've never looked at it as a third gender. Yeah, I'm going to say it, and I do apologise if this offends anyone, but the only reason we ever had a third gender is because of missionaries. You know, we only ever had a third gender because of missionaries. If we were never colonized, what am I on about? if missionaries never showed up, we wouldn't even know. You know what I mean? And it is one of those things, and you mentioned it, you know, we have this big stereotype about the white middle class man and all that kind of carry on. It is. If all of that stuff didn't happen, we'd still be happily running around in skirts and no one would even know. You know, but it is, yeah. But yeah, you're true, there are three genders, but back home, I know, it's like,
You're a girl, you're a girl.
Yeah.
Man,
You're a man. The third gender, oh, well, you choose where you are.
you tick your box.
Yep. Anyone else on that? The first thing you need is food.
And listen to them.
Yeah, food.
Cultural sensitivity. Yeah, I think we touched on that before, is definitely having that cultural sensitivity of not overtaking that space, but actually learning to build those bridges together, you know, so that there is that sharedness of, you know, like what some of us were saying, you know, transgender is such a prescribed Western ideology that might not be culturally fitting for us, but it is learning about those differences, but not putting a Western spin onto it. Yeah.
I mean, just on that point, the word whawhawhine is often associated as the European equivalent of transgender, which is not the case. Whawhawhine actually means in the manner of a woman, to be like a woman. There's no medical connotation with the word whawhawhine. It's just the closest thing in terms of the European term that you can identify the two with. So, yeah, little things like that can be quite tricky when dealing with. Yep, question.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, just one more. Just going back to Tabby. Yeah, I think to be completely honest, it'll be nice to actually have whawhawhine in the in the programs, or when we're actually getting invitation. I mean, this is nothing against LGBTIQ. I'm sorry, but I've even just learned about this terminology when I got the invitation to come. But yeah, it'll be nice to have whawhawhine, or go. And then Vakastalewalewa, Mahakavaine, because that would sort of almost localize it, yeah, that would be it. But in terms of your own perception and your own, the behavior that was shown all throughout the conference, I wish the world out there behind these walls would be like that, like all, like you. You know what I mean? You don't even care about, what we are, our sexuality, our identities, but just, the addition of the word whawhawhine. What was that?
We do care.
Yeah, I know.
I think too that the question about what should you do is Pacific Islanders, when we meet people, we always come with a wall. It might not be a big wall, but we always have our guard up. If you're looking at working with Pacific Islanders, you have to find a way to pull that wall down. It's not easy. I'm not going to lie. You may spend months doing it. You may have a breakthrough in a day. You have to find a way, because we will tell you what you need to hear. We are very good actors and actresses. We will tell you what you need to hear so we can get the food you put on the table. And another thing we will do is Islanders go into meetings, especially with this kind of stuff, with a preconception. We go in thinking everything under the sun. We don't care what you've told us. We will go in with this list of things that we think you're going to ask us, and and all that kind of stuff. You have to pull the wall down. And once again, if this offends someone, I do apologise. It is because of this skin colour. You know what I mean? I think everyone knows that. But if you have a genuine heart for it, Islanders will see it. We're good at reading people. You know what I mean? And yeah, all you have to do is pull the wall down. You can pull the wall down, you're in. Yeah.
For the Pride parade coming up, the reason why EquAsian's on there is because we're going to enough numbers, and a lot of us are not comfortable of being out there because the community thinks that everyone is everyone. It's just like the Asian community, the Pacific communities, it's the same. And how do
Time.
That's a good question.
One of your answers is time. Honestly, you have to just put in the time. You know, like I said, you pull the wall down. You know.
Those
What's
questions
also,
do relate, I think. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you go.
The questions do relate, I feel. With the wall, like you'll get people, for example, like me now, like it's very easy. You could talk to me about anything. Like I'm not easily offended, so I could. Sometimes we do have to ask those hard questions that might offend people, just so we can explain, so that you guys can understand or we can understand. You know, I mean, when we don't know, we will say something. It's just what you think and how you feel at the moment. Whereas maybe when we do things like this and we talk about it, it's easier to understand. And also, I feel like it is true. People do come with a wall because we're quite defensive. Because growing up, especially as you know, in our sort of the rainbow community, we have hit so many on our journey out. You know, we're like, no, don't fit in there. No, don't fit in there. Where do we fit in? And then you get to a point where you're like, why did I need to fit in? Because the more we talk about it, the more we hear how similar we really all are. And that's not just the rainbow community, that's everyone. So also straight people. You know, it's not like exclusive just, you know, rainbows and then not, you know, non-rainbows. It's not like that. It's more like the more we talk, we realize we're not that different at all, you know. We go beyond the labels and then we find out that, hey, we're just people, you know, get to know us, and then, you know, people feel more welcomed and they won't feel so put into boxes, you know, because we don't fit in the box. I mean, we're all people. Sharing love is what's important. Everyone can relate to that, and that's what we Islanders do appreciate, that sort of thing. Sometimes they feel like they want to see it first before they open up their love to you, you know, and it can come up a bit blunt, you know, like they don't want to love you, but it's just that sometimes we've been Pacific Islanders have been so hurt and so like jammed into that small box that they've been taught to live in, that they just can't open up yet. Like they're trying to, but it comes out real defensive. But don't read it in that way. I find that eventually they will open up, and it will help with like us talking to more people that, you know, they'll be like, oh, Islanders, you know, maybe they can talk to us and then we'll relate, because they'll open up more to people. And also just one thing I want to mention, I know that we have a lot of different cultural groups within the rainbow community. I think it'd be good also to mix them all together, just so you guys we can get the discussions going between all of us, because sometimes it's worrying that we separate ourselves even more and more and more, and then we never get together, and then it's like, oh, so I'm the half Samoan, half European, half LGBT, you know, and it's like, oh, that's why there's only me in here, you know, because because we're all so different. So I think the more that we're more inclusive of everyone, even if it's like we have the Islanders to like Pacific Islanders, Asians to talk to each other, and then have a big meeting, so it's not as scary for people that have the big walls.
Yeah, I think it's real powerful because, you know, I agree, it works both ways. Our communities as well, we can be quite to ourselves and you know, because it's safe. I think we're a collective community where we just like the safety of our own network. But I think if we work both ways, would you guys agree, and reached out, like, in my experience, how come there's a separate whono for Pacific Island Rainbow Community, and then there's a conference for, you know, the Western community? Why can't it be, you know, it's possible, but I think it just takes that cultural understanding and meeting, because I think there's preconceived notions on both sides, but once that's smashed, I mean, I think there's not really much difference between all of us.
Exactly.
Just in addition to all the answers, I mean, all the feedback from the others for Ben, one of the most powerful aspects in today's world, in Samoa today, is knowledge. Because Fawafinas are becoming more and more intelligent, that's why they, you know, continue to, you know, take the lead, and, you know, Fawafina Association keeps progressing. So that's why they always have consultation, that's why always have events, and they tie it in, like, they give a lot to the home of the age, you know, the home, and other things, like they're proactively involved with AIDS Foundation, Cancer Society. So, you know, it's, you know, and because culturally, you know, family disappointment, when you do well in school or do well at work, nobody really cares of your sexuality. Like, you know, they kind of it's just uncalled for to discuss you and having to come out.
Also, I think another issue, just going back to the organisation thingy, is islanders will tend to gravitate more to the cultural side. It's almost like the Pacifica Rainbow community is scared of words like LBGT, because that doesn't really have a strong significance for them themselves. So if, like, say, for example, at AUT, when I was there, there's the LBGT community, and then there's the Otto Samoan Association. I found that every one of my rainbow friends at AUT joined the Otto, but none of us joined the LBGT community, and I thought that was interesting. And I think, just in those words, like, what Kevin was saying, maybe somehow finding a way to just appeal somehow to, yeah.
That's pretty much my question, actually.
Okay.
Because, Western culture, we do very much like our boxes and our labels, but that sort of sounds like that's pretty much what marginalizes you away from us, because it's not your culture, that's not part of those boxes. So, what can we do? Should we just get rid of that LGBTIQ? Or can we add something to make it more inclusive for you?
Yeah, no, I'd just get rid of the whole thing.
Is that actually something that really puts you off being part of something? Do you feel like you're not a part of it? You're not represented?
I don't know, but maybe a LGBTIQF. You know what I mean? But personally, I don't really see anything, why I'll feel outside of the box. In fact, that was sort of the feeling when I first, joined, but, not anymore. But, also, I just wanted to touch on when I was student president for the university, I established the Association for Filipinos within the university. Some of the straight guys joined the association. And it really helped, how we were perceived, overall in the university. I'm not quite sure, maybe they were, because they were rugby players in the university, maybe they were sort of, talking about our association, the things that we did, and they wanted to, and eventually a lot of other people a lot of other students wanted to join. I'm not quite sure if it was those straight guys or it was just the fact because I was student president, they just wanted to be in it so that they can get, networking, for all the funds maybe. Yeah, but it was really, it was more productive with the straight guys for some reason.
I think that's why I like the idea of it being the rainbow. That's that's the term that I like, and not necessarily rainbow exclusive, but just supportive, so that it doesn't leave out anybody. It's just that that you're safe here. It doesn't have to be I'm tired of growing up going through labels. When people ask me if they go, oh, what is your sexual orientation? Bam, I can tell you. But as opposed to it being that's all I am, it's not. So that's why you don't go to someone who's gay and then someone else is gay and then you go, oh, they're the same. Exactly the same carbon print copies. No, we're not.
The most annoying one too is when you say, oh, I'm gay or I'm fuffy. Oh, do you know da 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 da? No, we don't all know one another. That's so annoying.
Or the oh, my friend is too. You guys should totally gay. Yeah.
I think too, sorry, just on your question, we don't feel left out. We don't. It's power, not power, it's safety in numbers. There is the odd one, probably Shaniqua and myself. We're more than happy to do stuff on our own and just be like, meh, whatever. But not everyone is like us. There is, I have friends that will go to something, but they will only go if 5 other people go because it's safety. You know what I mean? You go to where you're comfortable, and but it's not so much where you're comfortable, it's who you're comfortable with. So, and it is hard. I don't know how you can do that. Say I need 20 of you all to come. There's free food. But there's only so much free food that they'll eat. But yeah, it is. I think it's a safety numbers thing too.
And that's one of the key things that EquAsian is trying to build up is for Asians to finally have a safe place, because there's actually nothing out there. There's no resources. There's just nothing, and statistically, it's not doing very well. And so that's what we want to do, is to build a safer community where we can have a safe space to come together, to talk about our various things, but also reach out to all our other brothers and sisters to kind of, have a little get together, Yeah.
Down the back.
And when we try to get people together, we unite everyone with food yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Bread.
Yeah.
Otto.
Unite all these different Asians together with their food. And talk about stuff.
Yeah.
And I forgot what I was going to ask.
That's all right.
Thank you.
That's all right.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's all right.
Yes.
In Western culture, it seems to be that whenever somebody is going through some sort of identity crisis, it's like freaking out, and like you have to jump through the trenches of music and that sort of thing. But there's like a pre-established acceptance in the social for and that sort of thing. Is it a lot easier dealing with some identity issues and
I wouldn't say easier. I guess it's just a different challenge. Like, it's still a challenge, just in a different sort of way. I find at the end of it, like, once we become more comfortable, at the end of the day, we all love and we all want to be loved. That's it. Like, everyone can relate to that, No one grows up going, I don't want to be loved by nobody. We all want to be loved and we all want to share love. That's the main thing, and that's what unites everyone, We're all, even if it's an argument or a fight, it's all for something that you're passionate about, something that you love. So I find that even though there are challenges, like, we all have our own challenges, like what we touched on, religion, culture, everything. Like, it's all very individual, but at the same time, we all want the same thing.
You are right in a sense, to my own personal opinion, because you see it. Like, when you grow up as a Filipino, you see it. Like, I mean, it's not that we can hide. That's where the term coming out is kind of, almost alienated to us, because, I mean, you grow up as Filipino and you see it. Whereas, I mean, in other cases, it's, you will have to see it.
Yeah. Shaniqua was just saying that too. It's like, for probably both of us, like, I never actually really had to do it. You know what I mean? There is no actual, like, Mum and Dad, I need to talk to you.
Yeah.
We'll speak after dinner. You know what I mean? No. Like, I'll be honest, it's almost common knowledge. And, like, I've got Samoan friends who their parents knew, like 10 brothers. That's the whawhawhinga in the family.
The last one.
Yeah, the last one, that's the daughter. You don't get a choice. No, so, but it is, yeah, I mean, and Kevin's right, there's always that one in the family, the auntie, the uncle, who's already been down that path. So in terms of relating, it's easy. But yeah, I never had to come out, My dad brought my dress for the ball. I know.
Okay, guys, I think we're out of.
That's right.
Yep, sorry.
I just want to say thank you guys so much, because this is just a really great panel, and also, like, coming from Hawaii, I'm planning on getting a degree in, like, Indigenous and queer studies, and so a lot of my kind of college work revolves, or I guess personal political involvement is about kind of the way we use is, like, reclaiming gender diversity and, like, understanding the ways in which, for example, like, Native American tribes have their own, like, terms Same lines, and I'm just hearing a lot of kind of similarities also, like with Wine Waku and with your experiences. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just quickly on that, I did have to come out personally, and I don't know if that's to do with because how I was brought up here. My parents probably knew, but you know, also when you're around someone for so long, you just you just know them as the person, not the label. I took my parents out to dinner, had about 5 mojitos. And I was like,
That's cheating.
well, I brought it up as a discussion when I came out, so it's very different depending on who you are, but I brought it up as a discussion, what did they think about it in a third person sort of view, and that was bad because they just went to town with me, and then when I said it, they were like, why didn't you tell me that at the beginning, you wouldn't have said all those things, so it's like, you know, and I was like, oh, but they still, you know, I give them time because they have to go through it as well, like, they had all these expectations that they had already painted in their head for you. And I think we can relate to that too. All our parents do that, you know.
Yeah.
They want the best for you. They might not necessarily know what that is, you know, but that's all they want. And I like to see it that way, that it might show in a weird way, but that's what they want. They want what's best for you and what they think is best for you. So it is a way of them showing love for you. So.
It is. It's so true. Like, even though I identify as being female, I will always be my parents' son. You know, regardless of the situation. My mum still calls me that all over Facebook. You know, and that's something that I always knew. You know, it doesn't matter that I identify this, because, you know, you can walk up in the house and be like, I want to be called this. And your parents aren't going to, you know, they're not going to listen to you. You're not the parent. You know, and I think as being, transgendered, feeling and all that kind of stuff, once I got past that point of knowing that my parents were fine with it and I was always going to be their son regardless of whatever happened, I could start living. Yeah.
A lot of organizations used to use the word queer, but I think...
That's a stupid word. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's a stupid word.
Yeah.
I guess, in a sense, a lot of people don't like the labels and prefer to use the word and etc.
Yeah.
It's, this the word queer is not suitable for Asian and also Pacific communities.
Sorry if I offended with the word. Sorry. I think for me, it's just because growing up, that was a mock. That was not something I could hold on to strong and really identify with. That's just me. Because, you know, that was what you got called when you hit, at school. And it's just got bad memories. That's why I think it's a silly word. But people identify with it and each to their own, you know.
I think because we all have that word that was said to you that you can't identify with now because someone's ruined it for you. You know, growing up, those things that people say when you're young, they just stick with you no matter what. I personally didn't use it because I wasn't sure what fit under there. So that's the only reason why I'm not familiar and I don't really use it. But
Last question.
I find it really empowering, this is a statement, for reclaiming words that people used to use in a derogatory way. So personally for us in Dunedin, we use queer support as an umbrella, like the name queer, and then support as like an umbrella for all underneath the LGBTIQA, all the rest of the alphabet letters. But yeah, at first, I did find it really almost hurtful and even saying it to my parents, but now as we've reclaimed it, it's almost really empowering for a lot of the youth that come to us because they love that word, but like you say, some they can't do that. But.
Do you think using the word queer alienates Asian and Pacific communities?
No.
Yeah, I personally, it is a reclaimed word for some, but for some, and I don't think I can say that on behalf of all Asians, because, you know, we are talking at such a big area. I think some people are fine with it, some people are not, and I guess it is somewhat one of those community things that we all need to get together and sit down and be like, what are we comfortable with, what are we not comfortable with? Yeah.
maybe we should reclaim all our words. No. But it's also like the one, the term fag. So when someone says fag hag, I kind of retreat, you know, just because the memories come back. So, but it's good that like reclaiming the word is good, and I do believe that as long as you own it, you can use whatever label you desire.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I say, people ask what are you? You say your name. I'm Remy.
There is one word that I remember getting, like, it was when I was younger and I was going to school outside. One word that I remember being called was mala. It took me years to figure, it's a Samoan word, it took me years to figure out what it was, and it came up in a conversation with a really good friend of mine. And he goes, oh, that word's disgusting. And I said, why? You know, why is the word disgusting? He goes, because it means curse. And I was like, all these years I'm walking around like, yeah, that's a great word. To find out it means curse. And I was like, whew, okay. Not going to use that word anymore, but that was a word that I remember being used like a little bit around until I found out what it was, and I was like, ooh, yeah, not anymore. And it was one of those, like, for me, like queer. Like, it was,
I guess it's similar to the word fafafine. Fafafine for years had a negative connotation, but this younger generation, we've taken it back and we're trying to give it its former status. When I was little, to be called fafa or fafafine, it was quite a bad thing.
Yeah.
So I kind of understand, you know, with the queer, the take on queer, you know, but each to their own, I guess.
That would be a term we grew up hearing, and it always had a negative connotation, so we backed off of it. And so for younger generations to reclaim the word, as we say today, and that's where the difference is. I don't like the word either, but I can understand younger people reclaiming it because they never had to hear it on a regular basis. My grandparents used to use it, I was queer. So we knew it meant it was bad.
it's bad.
Not like.
It's like tranny. Yeah, see, that's a general consensus on that one. There you go.
Okay, on that note, I think our time is up. Sorry, guys, who had extra questions. Yeah, can we have a round of applause for our wonderful panelists?